He's my neighbor right here. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think this
So yeah, I had to cut this off. Like I said, I did think I was gonna start this rally soon. I had to make another rant video. This rally today is about some gun bills they trying to push in the city council. But like I told people before, that this is more of a federal matter than a city matter. But today, guys, in my personal capacity, I am not going to crash it. Marjorie, stay next to them? You should stand next to them. You should stand next to them. Hey, you're still... So Marjorie Velasquez, former council member, I still see her as a council member. Like, I mean, I feel a little bad because I helped get her out the door. So it's just like, but this is something that, like, no matter what the political spectrum is, I'm on my press pass today, so I have this. I have my press pass, but this is my pass for today, guys.
Exclusive today.
Yeah, I had to wear it. I get my press pass tomorrow. I lost it in the street, so but it's something I care about. It's something I really care about.
Taking pictures. Blowing this up.
we got more. Right now.
There you go, though.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Erik Bottcher, and I'm thrilled to be here today with my amazing colleagues and so many New Yorkers and advocates to speak out about historic legislation in the public health crisis of gun violence. I want to acknowledge my colleagues, Councilmember Rita Joseph, Sandy Nurse, Julie Menon, former Councilmember Marjorie Velasquez, and all the great advocates, many of whom you'll hear from today. The United States of America stands out among all countries on earth for the gruesome gun violence toll every year in our country. Over 43,000 people died from gun-related injuries in 2023 in America. Gun violence recently surpassed car accidents as the #1 cause of death for children in the United States. Last year, 16.7 million firearms were sold in the United States. So far in 2024, nearly 1.4 million guns every month have been sold. Many, if not most, of the purchasers of these guns are not aware that guns kept in the home are significantly more likely to injure or kill someone in their home rather than being used in self-defense. Yet, consumers walk into gun stores, purchase guns, and walk out the door, including at the 14 gun stores here in New York City, without seeing any posted warnings about the dangers of gun violence. Are we okay with that? No! Gun violence is a public health crisis that demands a public health response. It's one of the few, yes. It's one of the few deadly consumer products in existence that comes without any public health messaging attached. So today, for the first time in the United States, we are introducing legislation that will require gun stores to post graphic warnings in addition to written warning signage that conveys the dangers of firearm ownership. Yes. This public health effort is inspired by imagery on cigarette packages in other countries. This is an approach grounded in public health science. Many empirical studies have demonstrated the effectiveness of using pictures and imagery over text-only messaging in public health communications. And until recently, this would not have been possible to do. In a recent ruling of the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals has affirmed that graphic images on cigarette packaging do not violate the First Amendment. The tobacco companies had tied up for many years legislation that would put imagery on cigarette packets. We now believe that this court ruling has cleared the way for similar measures like this that aim to protect public health and safety. This legislation would require firearm sellers to display a graphic image that would be designed by the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Graphics could depict scenarios such as a child reaching for a firearm in an unsecured drawer. Graphics that illustrate the potential dangers of firearms in the home. The graphic would be accompanied by the following text. A firearm in the home significantly increases the risk of suicide, homicide, death during domestic disputes, and unintentional death to children, household members, and others. If you or a loved one is experiencing distress or depression, call the mobile crisis team at 888-NYC-WELL or the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Let's talk about guns and suicide. September is Suicide Awareness Month. According to research by Everytown for Gun Safety, access to a firearm in the home increases the rate of suicide by 3 times. By the way, it also makes it 5 times more likely for a woman to be killed in instances of domestic violence. I'm open to being a survivor of suicide attempts as a teenager. It's something I talk about to break down the stigma around mental health, to spur action on this issue that we've been failing on for so long. My father did not have a gun in the home when I was a teenager. Does now, didn't then. And there is not a doubt in my mind that if there was a gun in my home, I would have shot myself with that gun. Consumers deserve to be informed about the risks of gun ownership.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing here today. This is going to, I believe, save many lives, because once we do this in New York City, this is going to spread across the country. And one day, when every gun store in America has a warning like this over the counter, we're going to be able to say that right here in New York City, right here today, we started it right here. I want to give a major shout out to Everytown for gun safety. Alex and the whole team. We had a meeting back in the spring upon the reintroduction of legislation by my friend and colleague, former council member Marjorie Velasquez, who introduced this legislation for the written warning. We were reintroducing that legislation. And during our phone call, we discussed the idea of attaching an image and amending the legislation to have a graphic image. I discovered that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals had cleared the way for this with their decision. And over months of work, here we are today introducing this legislation. Thank you, Everytown for gun safety. We're going to hear from lots of advocates and my colleagues today. I want to start by introducing a special guest, Cameron Caskey, who, as a teenager, going to school, was there for one of the worst school massacres in the history of our country. And after experiencing something like that, it would be totally understandable after going through that kind of trauma if he wanted to put this behind him and not revisit this horrific event again and again. Why Cameron did the opposite. And he and his classmates, by founding March for Our Lives and many other efforts, are continuing to lead the way to stem the violence of gun violence in our country, particularly school shootings in our country. Please welcome Cameron Caskey.
Hey, so admittedly I don't do these very much anymore because I got pretty sick of them. I got to a point where I was like, hey everyone, we kind of know exactly what to do about gun violence. We've said it for years. As a matter of fact, they were saying it long before the shooting at my high school, but it was repetitive. How many more times did I need to go to everybody and say, hey, you see these shootings that people are committing with these guns? Have you considered that they might actually be the problem? Alas, when Councilman Bottcher brought me this idea, it was too good for me to not come out and talk about it a little bit, because legislation like this can really make a difference. Also, I didn't know there were gun stores. Did any of you know there were gun stores in New York City? What? I had no idea about that. I'm from Florida. There are obviously gun stores everywhere over there, but that's crazy. The only reason anybody lives here right now is because they cracked down on the gun. Anyway, that doesn't matter. That's nuts though. Thanks for telling me that. Firearms, as previously stated, are the leading cause of death for children and teens in the United States. I would ask, could you possibly imagine such an atrocity? But of course you can. Kids getting shot is kind of part of the fabric of this country. Children and teens, as you know, kill themselves and each other with their parents' weapons on the daily. I would call this an embarrassment, but the politicians who accept money from the gun lobby have no shame. Last week, there was a mass shooting at a school in Georgia where a 14-year-old child, 14 years old, can't even get a permit to drive, shot his classmates dead with a gun that his father legally purchased. These are still happening. 14-year-olds are doing it. And you know, my father is a gun owner. I'm not exactly throwing a party about that. It's just true, he's a gun owner. But it's worth noting that he has been trained by professionals in gun safety, and his gun is locked away where nobody in my home detected. That is called safe storage. As somebody who has been to communities affected by gun violence all across the nation, met with countless survivors and victims, hearing their stories, learning the truth, I strongly support the measure Councilman Bottcher is introducing to emphasize the strength and severity to people purchasing these weapons, that they must safely store their guns, and that any murders committed with their weapons are on them. Thank you, and I'm sorry we have to have these conversations because it really is a damn shame.
Thank you.
Joined by my colleagues, majority, city council majority, with Secretary Powers, and Councilman Keith Powers. Welcome, Councilman Keith Powers. I'm going to call up some of the prime co-sponsors of this legislation, beginning with Councilmember Julie Bennett.
Yes,
Consumer Affairs.
Thank you so much. I really want to thank my colleague, Councilmember Erik Bottcher, for his incredible leadership in pushing this bill forward. As a former commissioner of the Department of Consumer Affairs, I previously launched an investigation into Arms List, which is an online gun dealer that was illegally selling guns to New Yorkers without a license. What the step that Councilmember Bottcher is taking today is so important. If you think about it, from a consumer protection angle, you can walk into any pharmacy and buy Advil and Tylenol, and you open up that Advil and Tylenol, and there are pages of warnings. Yet you go in and you buy a gun, and there's absolutely no warning about what it could do, particularly to children. And so I just want to read these statistics. Last year, the NYPD License Division received over 13,300 applications to possess a handgun or rifle at home. That's 80% more applications for home licenses than the department got in 2022, and nearly triple the applications it got in 2019. The increase was even starker for concealed carry applications, which jumps from 258 in 2019 to over 6,700. That's why we need this legislation, and I can't thank Councilmember Bottcher enough for putting this forward. Thank you.
Please welcome another great colleague of mine and a prime co-sponsor of this legislation, City Councilmember Sandy Nurse.
Morning, everyone. I'm really proud to be supporting this legislation. I want to thank Honorable Margaret Velasquez and Councilmember Bottcher for not only reintroducing it, but leveling this legislation up with this imagery. I think it's so important that this is up front and center in every gun store, and that these images are circulated additionally online. There's not much the City Council can do, truly, to address the national crisis of gun fatalities, but this is smart, common sense legislation that can have an impact. I grew up in a household with guns. I grew up around the U.S. military. Everybody that I grew up around who worked with guns was trained on guns. They knew the risks, they knew the safety issues, they knew how to put it away properly. If you go and buy a gun at a gun store, you might not have, most likely you've not been trained. That's the fact. And you probably don't know how to store it safely, and you probably haven't communicated to your family members or people who live with you about how to protect yourself and what to do and not to do. So this is a first step. We certainly need much stronger action at the federal level, much stronger action at the state level, and as we've seen the erosion of our gun protections here in New York City, this is a real sure path to help ensure that people know what they're doing, they know what the risks are, and they're reminded with the visual that, hey, a young kid, a young child in your household could pick this up. If you're not putting it away properly, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not paying attention. So thank you for this, and thank you for everybody who worked on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Nurse. I talked about the partnership and leadership of every town in this development of this legislation. Please welcome Katie Applebuda, the Director of Government Affairs at every town.
Good morning. My name is Katie Applebuda. As the council member
New York City, as I hope folks know, has some of the strongest gun laws or New York State, excuse me, has some of the strongest gun laws in the country, and continues to introduce and enact gun laws designed to make communities across the state safer from gun violence. But we know that gun violence prevention requires the involvement of all of us, especially our local elected officials, to implement our strong laws, to educate the public about the types of gun violence that these laws are designed to prevent, and to help everyone understand the resources available to mitigate the harm of firearms. This ordinance builds on existing state and local laws designed to educate the public about the risks associated with access to firearms, and aims to increase the impact of these warnings with, as you see, really visual images that everyone can understand. It will create a study in the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to assess the effectiveness of adding these visuals to the warning signs. And then based on the findings of the study, require all, and as you've heard, we have them here in New York City, federally licensed firearm dealers operating here. Several counties in New York, including Westchester, Albany, Rockland, have already required these text-only signs, and now this important first ever bill would create visuals that go along with those. We know that despite claims from the gun industry, that access to a firearm, keeps people safer, the evidence tells a very different story. You heard one of the statistics from the folks here this morning. I'll just mention the one that hits home the most for me as a mother of small children, and it is that every year, nearly 360 children under the age of 18 gain access to a firearm and unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else, toddlers. That means there's roughly one unintentional shooting per day, and more than 70% of these unintentional shootings by children take place in and around a home. So it's common sense that people should be made aware of these risks before they purchase firearms, and it can save lives. With the introduction of today's ordinance, New York City's residents are one step closer to making sure that federally licensed firearm sellers disclose these risks to their customers in a way that everyone can understand. I urge all of New York City's council members to join Councilmember Bottcher and colleagues who are co-sponsoring this ordinance so that the Department of Health can begin the work of assessing the benefits of these warning signs, designing signage that effectively depicts the risks associated with access to firearms, and requiring these enhanced warning signs be posted by all dealers throughout the city, and as mentioned, be an inspiration to cities and states across this country.
Thank you very much. Another fun co-sponsor of this legislation, my former seatmate in the city council, Oswald Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Oswald Feliz, proudly representing District 15 in the Bronx. I want to thank all my colleagues who have joined today, also in the different groups, Moms for Man Action. Especially want to thank my good friend, former seatmate of Councilmember Erik Bottcher, for taking the lead on this very important initiative. We know that gun violence is a major problem in every part of our country. And this is a problem in areas where individuals are not licensed, but even where individuals do have a license to carry. We know that having a gun can drastically increase public safety risks, not only to the gun owner, but also to loved ones around them. We heard the data earlier today. We heard the data. Having a gun in the home can increase the risk of suicide for those that may be suffering from different mental health challenges, including depression, for example. It could also increase the risk of homicide in a basic domestic dispute. And equally bad, it can lead to an accidental discharge affecting the gun owner, but also their loved ones. So it's really important that we tackle gun violence through every single angle possible, including through education, and that's exactly what we're doing today. So I look very forward to seeing this bill introduced. Look very forward to seeing it get to the finish line and produce really good results related to safety in our city. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I can't think of a greater pain than losing a child. Losing a child to gun violence. My friend about to introduce lost a suit. give your life, making sure that other people do not lose their children to the violence. Please welcome Jackie Rose Adams, Harlem Mother's Day.
Thank you, Erik. Good morning, everyone. It is a good morning because we're standing out here trying to save some lives. So I'm Jackie Rowe Adams, founder of Harlem Mothers and Fathers Save. I'm a mother who lost 2 kids to gun violence. And I just have a little story to tell because this is so historic. 2006, I stood on these same steps of City Hall with the sergeant of NYPD, which was Erik Adams, and Assemblyman Keith Wright, calling the question, who's giving our kids these guns? And I want to say, now, Erik Adams, which is the mayor, is still fighting the guns, but today is historic because I'm standing on these steps again with none other than Erik Bottcher, making history. Making history. So these stairs are some lucky good stairs. So let me say, Erik has been with Harlem Mothers and Fathers since 2008, fighting this issue. This issue is not new to him. I commend him. He's still young and handsome and tall and still fighting these guns. That's because he cares. He cares about the city. He cares about these kids. And he's sick and tired, along with all of us, being sick and tired. Yep. We've been working with Moms of Man Action for many years, and we have got stuff done. But now, as Erik and his colleagues is calling on everybody because it takes all of us to get this job done. But he have taken the step to say enough is enough. What we say it? Enough is enough. Enough is enough. So let's get this fixed. Let's pass this legislation. Let's work hard on it because it's going to do me great to go in the store and see the signage. Do you want to see the sign that says stop selling these guns without license? Do you want to see a sign say stop the gun violence? Yes. Stop the gun violence. Yes. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. To call up another colleague of mine from Manhattan, this is the east of Manhattan, New York City Council member Keith Powers.
Thank you guys. I want to start by saying I agree with everything that was said about Erik Bottcher just a second ago. Look, this is a no-brainer to be here. We are in a national public health crisis when it comes to gun violence. Those aren't my words, those are the words of the United States Surgeon General. And with every single public health crisis, what do? We make sure that we get to work to stop it, and often, and almost in every instance I can think of, we make sure that the consumer knows exactly what they are getting themselves into when they decide to take that action. This isn't just a precautionary measure for the individual, though. It is a precautionary measure for people that might live in that household, for the women that are victims of domestic violence, for the child who might pick up that gun and take it somewhere into public or to school or somewhere else, or for the child who decides that they want to use it on themselves, sadly, and very, very sadly across the board. We know it's a public health crisis, not also because the Surgeon General said that, because every day we turn on our TV and we realize if we go to a synagogue or a supermarket or a concert or a church or a public event, that we are now at risk of someone bringing a firearm to that and hurting us or a loved one or anyone around us. And it seems, we say this all the time, more commonplace today than it was yesterday and the day before that. And whether it is a legal gun used in those circumstances or it is an illegal gun being used to take someone's life in our own city, we have a duty and a moral responsibility to do something about it. And we have taken measures in the last few years to try to fight back against those numbers that Councilmember Bennett mentioned, which was due to the harm of the Supreme Court that Donald Trump put 3 justices on that repeal New York State's protections around concealed carry and made our city way less safe than it was the day before that. So we need our city and our federal partners to get on board with doing something, but we certainly have to start at home. I am so thankful for Councilmember Bottcher and Councilmember Velasquez, by the way. This is such a common sense measure that I sometimes look there and why didn't I think of this? And every time I think of that, I see Erik Bottcher's name on the bill. But he's such a great legislator because he cares deeply about his community, but also the community and the city that we live in, that anybody who's coming to visit, whether you are a visitor coming to Times Square, we represent, or you live in his district or my district or anywhere else, that you have a right to a safe city. So Councilor Bottcher, I have to say thank you. I just want to end on one note, which is that City Council is going to do their jobs. But to our federal partners across this country who have decided to turn the TV on every single day and to ignore what is happening in this country when it comes to fire violence. Shame on you.
Shame on you.
Shame on you.
Shame on you.
Because we know cities are trying to protect themselves against gun violence, but we know who's not doing their jobs. And we know here in New York City, we have a great delegation doing their jobs every day. But for the people who have the ability to turn the TV on every day and see children in classrooms running for their lives, or people in their religious institutions who no longer feel safe going there, who don't want to go to the supermarket anymore because they don't know what that might mean for them, I have to say, if you are defending that behavior, shame on you.
Shame on you.
Thank you to Councilmember Bottcher, Michael. Thank you to every town, Moms Demand, everyone who's been doing this fight. You guys are amazing. You are heroes for the city and for this country. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Powers. By the way, there's more than one bill that Keith's introduced where it was like, why didn't I think of that? And there's a few ideas I thought was like the best original idea I put in for the bill, and now like someone already put in this idea. It's Keith Powers. Before I introduce my next speaker, I want to point out that this week in Hell's Kitchen, for the second time in 2 days, there was a shooting in the same corner. And this legislation, although it's about those who are seeking to legally purchase firearms, we have to remember that nearly every firearm that ends up on our street was originally purchased legally at a gun store. If this takes one gun off the street, I think it's going to take many guns off the street. This will be a very important effort. Please welcome the majority leader, Majority Whip of the New York City Council, Sylvina Brooks Powers.
Thank you for your leadership, Councilmember Bottcher. It is unfortunately an honor to be here today. As it was said earlier, sometimes we kind of come to these moments feeling like enough is enough. When are we going to have our last rally, our last conversation about gun violence, access to guns? And unfortunately, in communities like the one that I represent, we hear and see it too often. Just recently, over the weekend, we had a shooting where 3 people got shot after an event in my district. 1 person out of those 3 died. It's an unfortunate circumstance, and as it's been belabored, and I want to add to those voices, we need our federal partners to do their part. But every little bit counts, and that's why I'm looking forward to signing on to this very important piece of legislation being sponsored and introduced by Councilmember Bottcher, because we know that everything counts. And whatever we have to do to interrupt violence, to disrupt the access to these guns, we need to do it. Early in my term as a council member, there was a young boy named Justin Wallace. Justin was 10 years old and about a week away from turning 11. Because of an argument between 2 adults, someone came later to just randomly shoot into a barbecue, a family barbecue that was taking place, killing this 10-year-old. When we say gun violence is a public health crisis, it's a public health crisis. But it's a crisis that's being lived every single day by mothers that are left behind, like Miss Rupp, that are left behind like members of our community. And I'm I'm so thankful for our community partners, our pure violence partners, like 100 Teachers here, like King of Kings, like Queens World Priesthood, like Life Camp, that's doing the work, and so many others across this city. But it's going to take legislation, it's going to take action, and Councilmember Bottcher is declaring this council to make action through legislation, and I'm so honored that I'm having the opportunity to sign on to this bill. Thank you.
Please welcome another incredible advocate, Kevin Livingston, from 100 Suits for 100 Till.
It was Sunday morning, about 3 o'clock. I got a phone call from a team member telling me that I need to respond to a senseless shooting in our community. Whether the gun was legal, illegal, it needed no place in our community. As my council member just stated, 3 people were shot, 1 died that very next morning. Gun violence has no place in our communities.
No, that's right.
And I'm not going to subscribe to gun violence being the new norm, nor the new come up so that other people can make money on our own communities. We must put the guns down and make sure that we stay and educate our community. I thank Councilmember Bottcher for this sensible legislation. Who remembers This Is Your Brain on Drugs? Who remembers that? My age. And I remember, why my brain frying? Right? Who wants their brain frying? But it's things like that that catches your attention. So I tell you, gun violence has no place in our community. Sharon Plummer, another person from our community, lost 2 sons of gun violence in 3 years on the same block. Gun violence has no place in our community. That 24-year-old that took his last life Sunday morning, gun violence has no place in our community. We heard from Mrs. Rowe, her sons, gun violence has no place in our community. And we must talk about mental health. Mental health in our communities is what's propelling what's happening in our communities. So to you gun owner who are legally owned, it's okay to have your gun, but it's not okay to have it in your house without being locked up, because we want you to live and we want your family to live.
That's right.
Lastly, gun violence is not normal. And we will not normalize these press conferences. Our federal partners, we appreciate you. We need you to do more. We need you to do more. Pick up the mantle where it's starting right here behind me so that we can walk and make our communities much safer. Because yes, I am a cure of violence, but no, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be running around taking guns over people. I much rather show them how to start a business. I much rather help that person that has a mental health episode, making sure to let them know that it's okay not to be okay, but it's okay to say something.
Yes.
Gun violence is not normal.
Thank you. This legislation was previously introduced without the graphic image. It was regarding the text. And I had the fortune of being able to inherit this legislation from my friend and colleague from the previous session. Please welcome the Honorable Marjorie Velasquez.
Good morning, everyone. And this is first to Cameron and Ms. Jackie. I'm sorry this nation failed you. But I want you to know you're not alone. And today, you are standing alongside so many. Yes, they are a lot here on the steps, but they are much more behind the scenes. And we're going to see this accomplished because we've got you here. And it was an honor introducing it last year, and to see it being reintroduced and extended to include the graphic, it's even bigger. Why? Because we're taking this seriously, right? And as a nation, there's a lot of healing that's going on, but more importantly, there are healers here that we need to identify and realize that we need to take care of each other. So thank you to all who have done the work to see this getting started. So thank you all.
Please welcome a friend of mine who I've known for like nearly 20 years, who's been, after the Pulse shooting in Orlando, has become a national leader on mobilizing the queer community all across the country to fight gun violence. Please welcome Jay Walker with Gays Against Guns. Woo! Also a leader in the fight to get our city to enforce the laws that are already on the books.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you to all the council members who are working on this bill. It is incredibly necessary. We have to do everything that we can in our city government and in our state government when our federal government will not step up and protect the citizens of this country. And so this bill, to give people information that can change minds. They're angry at their neighbor, they're upset about something in their domestic life, and they go to that gun store to buy a gun in a fit of anger, and maybe a little language and a little graphic is going to make the difference and make them turn around and say, I don't want to do that to somebody. I don't want to do that to somebody I love just because they made me angry. I don't want to do that to the father of the child that plays with my child next door. And so that's why this is important. And I want to encourage our city council and others in city government to do more to enforce the laws that we have on the books right now. There was a recent article in Gothamist that was talking about the challenges to gun license applications, and how although New York has something like 50% of the applications in the state since the Bruin decision ruined our existing gun laws, New York City has this huge percentage of applications, but only 1% of the challenges. Whereas, places like Nassau County, which has like 14% of the population, has 30% of the challenges. There are laws on the book that we need our mayor, we need our 5 DAs, and we need our police commissioners and the people in charge of the police forces in the 5 boroughs to step up and make sure that people who should not be allowed access to guns, people with histories of domestic violence, people with histories of suicide attempts, all sorts of reasons that people who apply for gun licenses should not get them. So I want to close by saying that here in New York City, we are under assault by these quote-unquote Second Amendment warriors. And there are very strong reasons for that. There are people that like to gin up panic about crime. So even when you see that crime rates are going down, even violent crime rates are going down, there are people that want to make sure that there are gun violence crimes in big cities that are going to make national news, that are going to make people afraid, that are going to make more people buy guns. It is a vicious cycle, and we have to break it. And I want to thank the New York City Council for doing part of that job to break it. Thank you.
Against gun violence is a powerhouse in New York State and known as one across the nation. Please welcome Rebecca Fisher, the Executive Director of New Yorkers Against Gun Violence. Do we have a representative from New Yorkers Against Gun Violence? Giffords, very important. Oh, hello, sir. Please come up.
Thanks very much, Council Member. My name is David Pacino, and I'm the legal director of Giffords, which is the gun violence prevention organization founded by former Congresswoman and gun violence survivor Gabby Giffords. If you walk into a home where there's a gun, where there are young children, and you go to the parents and you ask them, do your kids know where your gun is? Most of them say no, of course not. You go to the kids, they know. Most of them know. And that's something that a person who's thinking about buying a gun deserves to know. They deserve to know that risk. But that's something that a lot of gun dealers won't tell you. Most of the gun deaths in this country, the majority of them are suicides. And that's something that a lot of gun dealers won't tell you. But that's something that a prospective gun buyer, that's somebody who wants to make the very serious decision about whether or not to buy a gun, deserves to know. This bill will let that happen, even though somebody might walk into a gun dealer that wants to keep that information hidden because they want to make a sale. Before that sale, they deserve to know what kind of risks they're taking, because buying a gun is a serious decision, and owning a gun is a serious responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please welcome Hussein Yadabari with the Muslim Community Network.
Gun violence is a public health crisis affecting our communities across the country, and I know in New York City it's a major epidemic. Today we stand here to take an important step towards addressing this epidemic. At MCN, we believe that every person has the right to be fully informed about the dangers of firearms, especially when it comes to protecting our families and communities. We are introducing legislation that will require gun stores to display not only warning signage, but also graphic images that clearly depict the health risks of firearm ownership. Gun violence is a cancer in our community, and it's continuing to metastasize and rear its head in ugly ways. This summer in the West African community in the Bronx, I have had to have the sad and unfortunate event of consoling mothers. I have buried a cousin, someone that I personally knew. Last year I buried a neighbor and a friend of mine. We grew up in the same building. So gun violence is a huge issue within our country. It's affecting our communities, and the age range is vast from the oldest of New Yorkers to the youngest of New Yorkers. We must face the hard truth. Having a firearm in the home significantly raises the risk of suicide, homicides, and domestic violence deaths and accidental shootings, especially among children and loved ones. At MCN, we are actively working to combat gun violence in communities in partnership with the District Attorney of New York, with gun violence prevention programs in youth populations. But that's not enough. We need legislation and policy on the books that's going to prevent people, the wrong people, from actually having firearms in their hands. By ensuring that the dangers of firearms are made visible and clear, we can work together to prevent more guns from falling into wrong hands and protect our neighborhoods. When I say protect, y'all say New York. Protect New York! Protect New York! Protect New York! Thank you.
Please welcome Dr. Divine Pryor to finish us out from the People's Police Academy.
Thank you, Councilman Bottcher, for presenting this historic piece of legislation. I'm going to use an old Baptist principle, that's to begin, be quick, and be out. So let me begin. I don't have to tell you about the stack. I don't have to tell you about the legislation. You've heard about it. You know what it does. You know what impact it can have. I'm here to give out instructions. My instruction to you is to take this information and share it. I want you to go to your homes. I want you to go to your places of worship. I want you to go to your places of work. I want you to go to your colleagues and share this information, because this knowledge that's contained in this legislation is power. And knowledge is power. Say, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. If that be true, the more knowledge you have, the more power you have. Yeah. And with power, we can change lives. Yeah. So if you take the word knowledge, you can get 4 words at it. You get the word know, the word now, the word ledge, and the word edge. You have to know the ledge now so you don't fall off the edge later. Right. Knowledge is power. My name is Dr. Divine Pryor. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the People's Police Academy, and I support this legislation. Thank you so much.
I want to acknowledge other advocates who've joined us today. We have Getting Out, Staying Out, the 67th Precinct Clergy Council, Stand Against Violence of East Harlem, Midtown Community Justice Center, Artists and Mothers. We have Local 1, Stagehand Local 1 with us. We have Julia Campanelli from the Hell's Kitchen Block Association, and other advocates who are here standing together to demand public health solutions to a public health crisis in our city, and then our state, and then our country. Thank you, everybody.
Read this. I think that's it.
Should we do want to do Gaggle? Because I think you
Selfie. Wait, 1, 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for
I'm sure that's the dress. And I voted red.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I don't want to say Chad.
Sir. You can I get this back to you? Yep. Thank you for
Cameron.
Cameron's
Tell me I'm not.
we need it. They have my
Yeah. Sorry about that. All right, he's on the live. All right, good.
Okay. We'll leave it there. Never mind.
So yeah, this is one thing I believe in. People might think like, yeah, I do rock with Republicans and conservatives, but there's something that I believe in is, yeah, we gotta get rid of these guns. I'm in my personal capacity, so I can say that. I gotta get my press back tomorrow. I lost it. I told people I lost it in the street. It's somewhere in New York City. It's not in my possession. If it was, I would have came in and couple of the other rally, but sometimes I like to be in my personal capacity because I get to do more. When you're press, you can't do anything.
Gun violence recently surpassed car accidents as the leading cause of death among children in the United States. Approximately 16.7 firearms were purchased last year in the United States, and so far in 2024, 1.7 million firearms have been purchased every month. Many, if not most, of the purchasers of those firearms were not aware that a gun in their home is exponentially more likely to kill someone in their home than to be used in self-defense. Yet consumers walk into gun stores every day, every minute of every day, purchase a gun and walk out of the store without seeing any meaningful messaging because the dangers of those guns. Gun violence is a public health crisis that demands public health solutions. It's one of the few products sold in the United States that is deadly, that comes without public health warnings. So today we're introducing for the first time in the United States legislation that will require gun stores to post graphic warnings on the walls of their stores that illustrate the deadly nature of guns in their homes. This is a public health effort inspired by cigarette packs in other countries. And you see graphic images that communicate health dangers. Until recently, this would not have been possible to do. Case law did not support graphics on cigarette packs in the United States, but the Fifth Circuit Court cleared the way for that in March. We now feel that we can move forward with this legislation. This legislation will require firearm sellers to post graphic on the wall, something like a child reaching for a handgun in an unsecured door, something that communicates the dangers of guns in the consumer's home. And it would be accompanied by text. The graphic would be accompanied by text that says significant workplaces for risks of suicide, homicide, death during domestic disputes, unintentional death to children, household members, and others. If you or a loved one is experiencing distress and depression, call 188-NYC-BELL or the National Suicide Hotline at 988. September is National Suicide Awareness Month. I am open about being a survivor of suicide attempts as a teen. My father did not own a gun when I was a teen. He didn't have a gun in the house. I can say with absolute certainty, and I know this to be true, that if there was a gun in my house when I was a teen, suffering from depression, I would have shot myself to death. Consumers deserve to know the risks associated with gun. What we're doing today will save lives. If it saves one life if it gets one person to think twice about bringing a gun into our home, it'll be worth it. We believe it'll count. This will save many, many lives. And with this, when this legislation is in effect in all 50 states, we'll be able to say that it started here today, right here in New York City. I want to invite Cameron Kasky, who has dedicated his young life to stopping gun violence and school shootings, co-founder of March for Our Lives, person who survived the Martin Stone at Douglas High School.
Hey everybody, admittedly I don't do very many of these anymore, but when I heard about this legislation I knew I had to get involved because this is a tremendous idea that can certainly save lives. As you know, firearms are the leading cause of death for children and teens in the United States. So you can ask if you can believe such an atrocity, but of course you can. Children dying is woven into the fabric of this country. And we all know, children and teens shoot themselves and each other with their parents' guns on a regular. I would call it embarrassing, but the politicians who take money from the gun lobby have no shame. Last week, a 14-year-old child shot and killed his classmates in Georgia with an assault-style rifle that his father legally purchased. My father is a gun owner as well, something about which I'm not exactly throwing a party, but it's important to note that not only has he been trained by professionals in gun safety, he also keeps the guns locked away where nobody in my household can reach them. This is called a safe story. As somebody who has been to many communities affected by gun violence all across the nation and spoken with countless victims, heard their truths, heard their stories, I strongly support the measure Councilman Bottcher is bringing to the table in an effort to remind these gun owners with strength, emphasis, and severity that it is their responsibility to safely store their firearms, and that any murders committed with their guns are on them. Thank you so much. Any questions?
First of all, you mentioned there are 14 gun stores in the city. Do you know where? I mean, I did find that an interesting fact, and wanted to know if you know where they're located for the most part, or any more information.
Apparently they exist in Manhattan, which I didn't know until we embarked on this effort. They are around the city. I think most people are surprised to know that there are gun sellers in New York City. We're going to start with the gun sellers in New York City, and I'm hopeful that this will be replicated in municipalities and states and hopefully some
Oh, sure. Not bad. NAACP's out there press conference, so.
Erik Bottcher, E-R-I-K, Thanks, everybody.
All right, so I believe that's done. It's 11:45 down. 11:46 to be exact. Hey, what's up? Hey, what's how you doing? Good. So 11:46 down. So that's what it is.